Okay, welcome back. I feel really good about this so far. One of the first things I want to do is just demonstrate how nice it is the way that we're actually building this board. So for example, let's say, what I really want is when we actually hover over one of these squares, I really want to see the cursor change to a pointer. So one of the quickest ways of doing that is if we specify that the type of a field, do Alt-Z, if we specify that the type of a field is a button, that doesn't work. Why didn't that work? Type equals button. I thought that would work. A2 type equals button. Didn't work. Weird. Usually setting the type to button changes our cursor to be a pointer. So let me just see bootstrap, cursor, pointer. I could change these to be buttons. Oh, is it not type? Maybe it's, oh, sorry, it's role equals button, not type. Even still, role equals button. Weird. Close this, refresh it. Not that I should have to refresh it. Still not seeing that. Type equals button. Role equals button. What if I have the class btn? Gives me a cursor, but you know what? I think that this. Let's move this to the side. I should have done that earlier. Yeah, I should have done that earlier because that ends up blocking quite a bit of the code, huh? Make it a little bit smaller. I think that's actually fine where it is. Yeah, hopefully that wasn't blocking too much of the code. I'm guessing it probably was, though. So, I'm learning. Next one, or next video, I'll keep that in mind. Anyways, problem with this is now we've got the border radius issue. So let's look at that. Border radius. Let's say that we don't want it to be rounded. So let's explicitly say, hey, yes, I'm calling this a button, but no, I don't want it to be rounded. So now we still preserve our click event, or the cursor still changing, but they're no longer rounded. So what do we want to do? First things first, let's add a click event. And I'm going to add the click event to our board, and I'll show you why. Events. We're going to say, hey you, board. Okay, board on click. Well, sorry, on click. So the click event lives on the board, but what fires it is going to be the squares. Here's the function. Okay, I'm being mindful of where the camera is. Save that change here. Inspect it, and now let's look at the console. Okay, so that was the square that fired it. But if I click the piece, you see that the target changes to the piece, right? So I want to make sure that when I'm clicking on a board, we're consistent about which element is actually firing the event. Okay. So I think what I want to do is when you click on one of these, when you click on the board, I want to make sure that it's actually e.target. Do that. I want to make sure it's actually this square that's firing it and not the piece that I'm clicking on. If I click on the actual piece, so so we'll see if there's a bootstrap class to do this. Guess we could make it disabled. What if we do that? So for example, for the pawns, what if I do disabled add a property disabled, and now let's look at it and see if we indeed have that property. And now let's see, okay, click on the square. It doesn't mean anything. It still fires the click event. What I want to do is this, where I add a style where the pointer event doesn't do anything. So I think what I want to do for that is, first of all, I'm going to add a piece class here. And then since we've already got CSS going, I'm just going to say piece. And I just want to say pointer events. None. None. Okay, pointer events none. Let's get rid of this disabled because that wasn't serving its purpose. So now, click on the square. Good, saying that it's the square. If I click on the piece, it still registers that I'm clicking on the board, which is what I want, because I have a quick way of determining what the actual coordinate is of this, of where I'm clicking, based on, and that coordinate is just the ID, right? So now let's add a function to move the piece. And what we want to do is let's just take in two parameters. Start coordinate, end coordinate. And what do we want to do? So like E2 to E4, we just want to move whatever piece is on E2 to E4. So let's do this. We've already added the piece. So now this function is move piece. So we've got the coordinate, which is start coordinate. The ID is the coordinate. Dot piece. So whatever piece is within this ID. And then what we want to do is append to end coordinate. And this actually needs to be okay. Grab whatever piece is in this square, or whatever piece is in the E2 element, and move it, append it to, which is going to be pretty much the same thing as just doing this. Well, not that. Not that. let's just see if the actual method does what we were trying to do. So on click, well, really we need to react to 2 click events. If there's a piece on this square, then what do? It's a little tricky. How do we want to do this? Just to get something down, I'll probably change this. I want to get something down here. So I want to do var start click equals an empty string, var end click equals an empty string. And I'll probably end up changing this, but I just want to get something down. So if first click is an empty string, then let's say first click equals e.target.attribute ID. So the first click would be E2. Otherwise, or let's just do final click equals e.target.id. I guess end click, okay. And if it's the second click, then we want to actually move it, right? Then we do move piece first click to the second click. Let's see if that works. I don't know if that's going to. We want to move the piece and then clear these. I'm not a huge fan of doing it this way. We'll see though how this works. First click is not defined. You're not defined. Oh, start click, not first click. Start click. Start click. Start and end click. Second click. What's with me changing these variable names up willy-nilly? Start and end click, not second. Come on. Come on. I don't know about you, but that looks like it moved the piece to me. Okay. Looks like it's moving pieces. That's cool. Okay, we got a game of chess. We got a game of chess. That's a problem, obviously. What's the problem? I don't see a problem. That looks fine. Okay, so that works. As far as moving pieces goes, I mean, it does just that. Obviously, there's no notion of making sure that it's a valid move, but we can handle that later. I mean, we can do stuff where we know if it's on, if we hit this else block, we know that we're probably trying to move a piece. So we can add logic where before we move the piece, we have validation to make sure that it is indeed a valid move. And that is where it gets tricky. That is where it gets tricky. Because there's all sorts of unique logic. For example, if the piece had, for pawns, if the piece hasn't moved yet, it can move 2 squares. Otherwise, it can't. There's also en passant, where in this position, the white pawn can capture black's pawn like this. However, that doesn't work if we end up in position like this. Black moves here and then black moves here. Now we can't. It's only if black's first move is to the second, if its first move is moving 2 squares, that we can do that. So there's all sorts of tricky logic. So what would be nice is if we actually had if we were using object-oriented development, I could have a class for each piece, and that class has different properties. One of the properties is the amount of times it's moved, right? Which can inform us of the eligibility of these kind of moves, right? If white tries to do this, we're taking that into account. Okay, what is the piece that's trying to capture? Black. Has black only moved once? Yes. That tells us, okay, black is on this square and it's only moved once. That tells us that this is an eligible move for white, right? So we have to keep track of that in each piece's state, which we might be able to keep track of the state of each of these pieces just by using like a jQuery data object. So something to think about. We could also use JavaScript classes. Which you might do. Okay. Well, we might be able to use both, right? Might be able to use both. Where we have a class for each piece that keeps track of that data and then save an instance of each of those classes to our piece, to the actual markup of that piece via like a jQuery data object. That might be a thing that we can do. But let's do that in the next video. We got a lot done just in this one already with the ability to move pieces. E4, E5, knight E3, knight C6. Oh, one thing that I do actually want to do is also log this. So we'll do do a log start coordinate, end coordinate, and see that. Oh, oops, well, I'm not actually logging anything. What I meant to do is this. That's what I meant to do. And I also want to get rid of this. We're done logging that there. E2, E4, E7, E5, knight F3, knight C6, Got a Roy Lopez going. Right? Looks pretty cool. Okay, so let me brainstorm a little bit on how I want to tie the data of each of these pieces to those actual pieces, right? What's nice is when we're moving these pieces, my idea originally was to just delete it and remake it, but no, we're actually preserving this element. It's just moving. So to prove that, like let's restart this. Like let's say that somehow, go away. Somehow this E pawn later in the game ends up over here, which is feasible. It realistically could end up over here, but we still have this ID saying that this is an E2 pawn. So in the next video, we'll add that. We'll add some way of adding additional data to each of these pieces so we can track how many times it's been moved and anything else we need. All right, in the next video.